I'm going to discuss is the utility of RET-HE in monitoring the intermittent iron therapy. So a part of this talk, I will first discuss that why did people start thinking about the intermittent therapy? I mean, there must be some problems with the regular conventional therapy, standard daily therapy that the doctors were giving. But then what made them, why the challenge of intermittent iron therapy came up? And if someone thought of, challenging that age-old concept of daily therapy, then there has to be a parameter by which you can, exactly prove that intermittent iron is better or even worse than the oral daily therapy. So with my slides, we will try to answer some of those questions. So we are all aware that iron deficiency anemia is a leading cause of anemia worldwide. And it is no rocket science for anybody, any clinician or pathologist to make a diagnosis of iron deficiency anemia. With the help of the automated counters, we can get all the parameters like hemoglobin, hematocrit, MCV, MCH, or the biochemical tests which support a classical clinical picture of iron deficiency anemia. And in the later years nowadays that we have RET-HE as a very good parameter. So making a diagnosis of iron deficiency anemia in today's time is even easier. But if it is such a common diagnosis, the clinicians also must be very, very confident about treating it. But that's sadly not the story. Let's look at a case scenario. So I have taken two patients. This is like a real-time case scenario in our hospital, and both of them were almost of the same age. 34-year-old male who had a low hemoglobin, and they had low MCV, MCH, and all the parameters, the biochemical tests, the automated counted parameters, they all pointed towards a picture of iron deficiency anemia. And RET-HE also supported a picture of iron deficiency anemia, as you can see. And so the clinicians were like quite confident that they are dealing with iron deficiency anemia in both these cases, and therefore both these patients were started on the daily iron standard therapy that's given 70 mg divided into 70 mg 3 times a day, and then they were asked to come for a follow-up. Now what we expected that both of them should be showing the same response. But then what happened after 3 months is that the patient one did not show the desired response. What is the desired response? Means that he didn't show the desired increase that one expects after 3 months regular oral iron therapy. That he did not show. But whereas in patient 2, the desired response could be seen. That means with the same kind of diagnosis, both these patients given the same therapy, but still not the same response. So clearly the treatment of iron deficiency anemia, which is so settled and established in textbooks, has some lacunae, has some gaps in our understanding that we need to understand. Therefore, that is the reason maybe why we are failing more often than we would in such a common diagnosis. We are failing more often, and there has to be a reason for this. This issue was actually raised very well in one of the recent issues of Blood, wherein there was an article which was entitled, "So You Know How to Treat Iron Deficiency Anemia." So this article actually challenged all the standard therapies that we are giving for iron deficiency anemia. I'll just give you a gist of what this article raised, what was the query that was raised by this article. Now, it said that the standard therapy of the mild to moderate iron deficiency anemia in today's day is divided into 3 to 4 iron tablets daily, and we are mostly giving a 70 mg tablet 3 times a day, every day, and this is considered as the best treatment. And then they had some calculations wherein they came to the conclusion that the actual requirement per day for an iron deficient person is somewhere around 17 milligram per day. So if you calculate how much we are actually giving to him is far way more. So that means there is somewhere about 180 milligram of extra unabsorbed iron that is there in the system. So what is this extra iron going to do? It's not going to help him anyway. In fact, it is going to just do the opposite. It's going to contribute to all the unpleasant things that we associate with iron deficiency anemia. Like we all know that iron deficiency anemia is very well associated with GI side effects, and more often, most of the patients actually will complain of these side effects sometime during the therapy. These side effects are mostly constipation, diarrhea, indigestion, any alteration in gut flora, metallic taste, or something like that. And sometimes, these side effects are so severe that the patient actually, chooses to leave the treatment of iron deficiency anemia, or leave that therapy in between because he is not able to bear these side effects. Now, clearly, because we are giving way more and still in most of the patients, we are not getting results. So till now, we have clearly understood this, that there is more to iron regulation than just iron alone. And any story of iron metabolism is now, we know, incomplete without its the mention of its master regulator, which is hepcidin. Now, what exactly is the connection between hepcidin and iron in a molecular way is actually a long story. But to cut the long story short, what happens is that whenever there is iron in circulation, iron in circulation is going to increase the release of hepcidin from the liver. And this hepcidin, once it is released from the liver, what it's going to do is that it's going to inhibit the absorption of iron from the intestines. At the same time, what it's also going to do is that it is going to increase the accumulation of iron in the reticuloendothelial macrophage. So exactly what it is trying to do is that it's trying to lower the concentration of iron in the circulation. So iron is there in circulation, it's causing hepcidin to release, and hepcidin in its turn, using all its methods, trying to decrease the concentration of iron in circulation. But we are giving more and more iron in our oral daily therapy in divided doses. So is that by our current oral treatment of iron deficiency, we are paradoxically causing its own inhibition or its own interference in its absorption. So this crosstalk between hepcidin and iron has been studied in detail, because the timing and all are also being noted, that when iron is given, at what point is hepcidin exactly released, so that we understand better that how it is going to interfere in the absorption of iron. And it has been studied that plasma hepcidin increases up to 24 hours after oral iron ingestion. So within 24 hours, it goes on increasing. And then once it is increasing, as I just showed it to you, then it's going to prevent any further iron absorption by blocking the ferroportin channel. So this blocking effect of after a single dose can last for as long as 48 hours. So this is called as the hepcidin effect on iron absorption, and a single dose of iron is going to do it for at least 48 hours. So this is clearly, just assume that you are continuously taking iron every day, and then you are continuously increasing the hepcidin circulation. So it's not going to do any good to the iron absorption. So we thought of, checking this fact out by doing, a study, a randomized study we planned in our center, wherein we divided patients into two groups. One group getting daily dose of iron as the standard therapy is there. And we thought we would check another group with an alternate day regime, and we thought of using seeing how much is the hepcidin released in these two groups. So it was planned as a hospital-based randomized interventional two-arm analytical study. And we took all the newly diagnosed and untreated mild to moderate iron deficient anemia adult patients in our study group. And we tried to exclude all other possible causes of iron, even dual iron nutritional deficiency, any liver disorder, anemia, and we performed a battery of tests to rule out that this is just plain iron deficiency anemia. And this was how I studied. So we included 50 patients of newly diagnosed iron deficiency anemia, and we divided, randomized them into two groups. The one group received alternate day oral tablet ferrous sulfate 60 mg, and the second group received the same tablet daily. Both the groups, we gave the tablets at the same time, 2 hours after the morning meal, and we followed them up for a certain period of time. So I'll just discuss in my future slides that how did we decide upon the timing and all. But our end period was 21 days, and as happens in most of the studies, we were not able to have all these 50 patients till the last of we had some dropouts and all, and we were finally, for our final assessment, left with only 20 patients in each group, and we analyzed those patients. And their baseline characteristics in both these groups of all these parameters were more or less equal and statistically not significant. Now, the question that came to the team was that we have made two groups. One group we are giving daily iron, and the other group we are giving alternate day iron. Now, how do we assess the response? So, how do we assess the response? This question had actually two parts. One, to assess the response, we were looking for the right parameter which would actually give us, an insight into the response to the iron that we are giving. And the second part of the question is at what time should we check for that parameter? Because, we don't want a parameter which would give us a result, so many days later, so that, we have already lost a good number of days wherein we could have done something for the patient. So we analyzed all the parameters that were available to us to assess any response to iron. So we considered hemoglobin and MCV or MCH. We know that any change in response to iron is a very delayed response, and therefore these were not the ideal parameters that we were looking for. And if we considered biochemical parameters like ferritin, serum iron level, or something like that, then we all know that they are acute phase protein, and we wanted to study for a longer time. In between, if there were any infections, inflammatory conditions, something which could have hampered with the assessment of ferritin, and then some of these even fluctuate during the day, and we consider them not to be a very good parameter to assess our response that we were looking for. So next into consideration was bone marrow pulse iron stain. This is in fact the gold standard for assessing any response to iron, but this also takes its time, and it's an invasive procedure, not to mention then that also is a drawback. So then there was this parameter that is now so much talked about, that is RET-HE. And we had actually, earlier done a study in our session, in our institute, where we had seen that RET-HE is actually a very good marker to predict, to make a diagnosis of ID, and it was comparable to bone marrow iron store. We had done this study, you had taken two groups, depleted and functional iron deficiency, and doing some ROCs and all. We had come to this conclusion that RET-HE was far superior to serum ferritin for predicting iron deficiency anemia, and therefore we were quite confident for it as a diagnostic marker, but we had to yet see how good was it to assess the treatment, But we all know that what RET-HE actually does is that it is looking at the reticulocytes which have a shorter duration in circulation. So that means last 1-2 days only it is going to give you the picture of iron in the marrow. Whereas if you are looking at the hemoglobin content of RBCs, they have a longer span, 120 days, and therefore they will not reflect the picture of what has been the recent change. So RET-HE is something that can be called as a real-time evaluation of bone marrow, and therefore should have helped us. Let's see what it did. Once we decided upon RET-HE as our parameter of assessing, now the second question was the timing. So one sample, of course, we did baseline to make sure that the two groups were okay, and then day 0 we considered as the first day of giving iron, and then after that we took two samples on day 2 and day 3, and then there was one sample on the 21st day. So day 2, if we consider day 2, so by day 2 the alternate group had already taken one iron only, and whereas the daily dose group had got 2 iron tablets. Whereas if you consider day 3, by day 3 the alternate group had got 2 iron tablets, and the daily group had got 4 tablets. And the 21st day, basically we wanted so that we could look whether there has been any change on the hemoglobin as a parameter. And these were our results. So let's look at what happened to hepcidin. So this is the daily therapy group, and if you see that on day 2 in the daily therapy group, the raise in hemoglobin from the baseline is 0.62, which is significant, and but the raise in the alternate day therapy group is only 0.40, and this is not significant. So you can easily assess, and let's see how much is this on day 3. It is 1.76, whereas it is 1.40. So clearly it is seen that the mean change, that mean rise actually in hepcidin in alternate day therapy group is actually much less as compared to what's happening in the daily therapy group. Okay, so that means hepcidin we are going to have less in the alternate daily therapy group. but is it being reflected in the iron content of the RBCs? So we had this parameter RET-HE to assess that. So if you see, the mean change from baseline of RET-HE in the daily therapy group is 0.02, which is not significant. But in the alternate day therapy, surprisingly, actually not surprisingly, because we now know that hepcidin has not interfered with iron absorption, and therefore as we expected, 0.82, it's a significant rise on day 2 itself. So no other parameter could have helped us to pick up a response as early as day 2, but this clearly showed that here we are having a rise. And if we compare day 3, the rise in RET-HE is 1.30, far beyond what is there in the daily therapy group. And how is it reflecting at the total hemoglobin? So that for that we had this day 21 investigation, and if you can see that alternate day therapy group, the rise from baseline in day 21 is 1.58, and this is far more than what is there in the daily therapy group. So clearly we are seeing three things: that hepcidin rise is there more in daily therapy group, RET-HE rise is more there in the alternate day therapy group, and the mean hemoglobin rise is clearly more there in the alternate day therapy group. So what is exactly happening is that once you are giving iron to an daily therapy group, this is causing an increase in hepcidin, and by the time the second dose is given, still that hepcidin is there in circulation, causing its inhibitory effect. So the second dose is actually not contributing anything to the rise in RET-HE. What it is contributing to is perhaps only the side effects that are associated with RET-HE. And maybe it's time that the orthodox treatment of daily iron in iron deficient anemia really needs to be challenged. And actually we also looked at the side effects, and patients were far more comfortable in that group in which we were giving alternate day therapy. They had less of nausea, they had less of metallic taste, and therefore less feeling of discontinuing that treatment, because as compared to the daily therapy group where all the complaints were much more. So how has RET-HE helped us, and how it can help in monitoring this intermittent iron? We are getting these results in a very short period of time. If you can see, even on day 2 there were differences in RET-HE as a parameter, and no need of repeating that it can be measured simultaneously in the same automated blood count devices in which you are ordering your CBC and hemoglobin, and not affected by any chronic disorders that make you rethink about your iron that you are giving. So that gives you a clearer picture, and obviously it is telling you about the iron that has reached the bone marrow, ready to be served to the RBCs, and therefore a real-time evaluation. What we would have loved to also do is to look at this serum hepcidin maybe one time more in the alternate therapy group, somewhere around day 21 or something, but we had some constraints of funds, and also maybe we will plan a future study wherein we will even look at a higher even on days like day 21, and see how much it is raised in the two groups, what is the comparison. So this is my team. This is from the Advanced Metabology Lab at SMS Jaipur, and I think what I would like to end my talk is with the note that COVIDs are a tough time for all of us, but we all have to be in this together. We have to stay strong and stay safe.